Hey, it's Dave here. I want to take you through a little branding project we did for a golf coaching app. Now, this is a market that we kind of know some about, but not a lot. So we started off with doing some market research, trying to understand where the real opportunity was, what the growth market was that we were really going after, and then created a brand with a visual identity and everything else that's required. So let me dig in now. Let's take a look at how we approached it. So the first part was really looking at the overall golf market. It's a big market. We know this, right? It's a very sizable market outside the U.S. It's big enough in the U.S. And one important note is that annually golfers spend on average $2,000 on related golf stuff. And that meant, well, at least we're going after a market where we know people have money to spend, which is key when you're trying to build an app that you're going to charge people for. Next, we looked into sort of the overall dynamics of the market, and it's probably not a surprise to anybody that golf and the number of golfers is kind of flatlined. It's usually thought of as mostly in a decline. So actually, this first chart over there on the far left, showing that golfers have flatlined, was a little bit surprising at first, but still was flat. The question was, where is there an opportunity? And that came in this middle chart here. We talked about beginners, and beginners is actually a market that's growing. There's more people coming into the sport, and the number of beginners has been steadily increasing for some number of years. The really interesting part, and what really drove the brand for us, was this last little chart here, which showed that beginners were generally younger, were generally less male, and were generally less white, which was really interesting. So we knew that we had to think about the brand for this app and this company in a way that would stand out among all the other golf brands. So we moved into the brand development phase and started to think about what we could do. First step, let's look at what the brands are like today. Let's see. There's a lot of white and gray, primary colors, blues, reds, greens, anything that sort of stands out against grass. Mostly middle to older white folks. So the folks, the ones in the middle there, they're looking pretty sporty, and way over in that corner, somebody's got his hat on backwards. That's about as sort of hip and cool as things get. Fonts generally sort of middle to older. Even things like the Ben Hogan brand there, where it's definitely dated. The Masters tournament feels very old. A lot of that is important in golf, right? People like the heritage of the sport. They want to connect to that. But the challenge was, is that really going to attract a newer class of athletes that are going to be interested? We looked at what the current market's like for golf apps, and this is kind of the vibe, come on, son, let's go play golf and download that app, And generally the golf app, it's full of all kinds of things that are generally a little bit sort of a blah of nothingness, nothing that really stood out as anything interesting. So we pivoted and thought, all right, let's create a mood board about brands that's sort of exciting, in the athletic space. What would bring people in new? Where are the vibes that actually bring new people into sports and into apps? And you end up with something like this, right? Much more vibrant colors, more interesting sort of movement, lots of different types of people. We grabbed things that were sort of from mountain biking, and there's some Peloton there, and there's some yoga. There is actually a golf business here. That's Laird Hamilton's golf board company. So there was some things crossover. Most of this is definitely in a different kind of category. The Nike, the Les Mills, the Lululemons of the world. So how do we do that? And we looked at the apps that come from these companies. They're vibrant, they're active, really interesting interfaces in some of them that we tried to draw on. So where did we get to? Well, we started off with a cool name. Thanks to one of the founders who worked through this, we narrowed it down to a pretty interesting idea. And we tried to incorporate a brand that showed some interest and some vibe, and we could use it in a lot of different ways. And so brand name was Zwing. So sounds a bit like swing, obviously, but the Zwing and the Z has a pretty interesting sort of multi-purpose. It's got a little dot there that feels like a golf ball, and then the two angles there are really nice to help you feel like it could be somebody swinging, it could be the shadow of the pole and the flag. There's a lot of things there that kind of worked. The brand itself worked really well as an app. Nice icon because the Z stands out. We could put it in a lot of different settings, different backgrounds. We could imagine how it would look, on the screen of a phone. It stands out. It allows you to sort of grab it, and developed a color palette that would work. We had to be working with something that works with green because, well, golf is on grass, and there's a lot of green color. So these sort of primary, main colors of green were helpful, but we had to have the secondary palette that could really work and play off of that and be able to work with it. Developed all the font set, as you'd imagine. And then let's walk through a few examples of how we got to sort of thought about it in a little sort of playful way. You can see how that actually could, sit there on grass. You could play with it, that it was actually real and physical with a golf ball. We put it in a variety of different settings to help feel like, well, maybe that's a little bit more sort of pensive. You could see that sort of in an ad at the Masters tournament where it had to be sort of quiet. But you can also see it in action. You can see how the Z plays with the action and the form of the brand. It could be a little bit explosive because it's got a zwinginess to it. It could be even sort of really energetic, and you can see how people are zwinging across the course. I love this screen because I don't know how they actually got that done, but it's a neat photo. But most importantly here for us is this was a strong attempt at expanding the market for golf overall and for the app, and making it a really inclusive idea. Right, so we focused a lot on imagery that was part of, that included people that were part of that dynamic group of new golfers. And so how can they identify with and really feel like this is them? And when they see the brand, they could see themselves as the hero of the brand. Right, so how can your customers really feel like they're the hero of the story that you're presenting? So it was pretty fun. Anyway, thanks a lot. Glad you could join us for this little brief. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or any other projects you'd like to talk to us about. You can find us at getsonder.com and shoot us an email always at hello@getsonder.com. Thanks.